I, Dr. Asha Bhatia, on behalf of Universal Business School, welcome all the dignitaries and the participants to the Case Study Conference organized by the Universal Case Research Center, Universal Business School, in association with Association of Management Development Institutions in South Asia, AMDISA, and our knowledge partner, Case Center, UK.
As you can go through the agenda, it's filled up with industry experts, global domain experts, and a lot of academic and expert inputs. Rarely you see such a combination with participants across the world. We have participants from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, US, UK, Saudi Arabia, across, really universal. Okay, so I'm sure with the kind of inputs, expert domain inputs, everyone will benefit.
We believe that there are very few case research centers in India itself. So we said, where can we distinguish? Of course, the IIMs are very, well ahead in this game. And so we said, can we start becoming from disseminators of knowledge to creators of knowledge? And that's where we said, because of our industry backing with 60 CEOs on our board, it was clear that we are more going to be focused on the industry and business schools. That's what we do. So we would combine the strength we have and the connects we have with industry to getting deeper into cases. And so whilst we've written several secondary cases, we are on the threshold of writing some mega billion-dollar companies, primary cases as well, and we are talking with CEOs. They are supporting us. So I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to say that, whether it's yet done, but very soon you will see that our cases will be, the cases written by our faculty here will be studied in schools around the world. So very, very excited, and I wish the conference all the best. Thank you.
I should begin by apologizing for my voice. I've got a cold and my voice is a little bit hoarse. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I hope that this works. So I'm going to talk today about trends in the writing of teaching cases. That is, cases that have been written with the view of them being taught in the classroom and generating discussion in the classroom. And I want to begin by setting the trends in context, because these trends all are as a result of pressures coming on case writers to produce cases in particular formats. And it's important to understand the context in which the writing takes place. So the components of the case method are a business decision. So the case is written around a decision point in a real life business scenario. And as I've explained, what I'm talking about today is a teaching case. That is one that is designed to be taught in the classroom, not a research case which is designed to illustrate some academic theory. So coming out of the business decision, an author will write a teaching case, and alongside the teaching case, as we'll look at in a moment, the author will develop a teaching note in which they share their experience of teaching the case and their advice on how best to get the most out of the case in the classroom. When the case is then taught in the classroom, that learning takes place through the class discussion. And the important strengths of the case method approach are delivered by that combination of the case itself and the teaching session in the classroom.
Morning.
Teaching is done by questioning rather than telling students, by asking them questions. And the case deals with ambiguity and uncertainty in a very productive and impactful way. So cases should be written to generate that atmosphere and deliver those lessons in the classroom. The wider context of writing a case is that there are external factors operating on schools. which influence the teaching and the curriculum within the school. And most recently, to take an obvious example, during the pandemic, many business schools switched to online learning rather than face-to-face classroom discussion, and that has had an impact on the way in which case authors have approached writing cases. So that becomes a trend. Though the external factors are often expressed within the school in the design of the curriculum, and then the curriculum is the context within which case writing teaching takes place. And actually, beyond the classroom and beyond the school itself, there will be many impacts of the case in building relationships and bridges between the school and the case author and the business community in which the case is set. So we can see that there's an element here of linking research, teaching and practice through the writing of a case. I'm sure that this will be part of the context that Ketan will be talking about in his work with you in the workshop, and I think it's an excellent starting point from which we can launch our own investigation this morning during this presentation. That wider impact and context of writing a case becomes a kind of perpetual virtuous circle in which an academic will research a business scenario, and that may result in a submission of a journal article to a peer-reviewed journal. But in writing that doesn't stop the opportunity or prevent the opportunity to write an alternative output from the research, which is to write a case. Then the case goes into the classroom through being taught. That has an impact with students in their learning. It has an impact on the relationship between the author of the case teaching their own case and their students. And beyond the classroom, once having taught it in the author's own classroom, it's possible to distribute the case and widen that impact by taking the learning to classrooms around the world. And I know how popular Indian cases are, for example, in classrooms in many other countries around the world. So there's a huge opportunity to widen the impact of the learning from the case, but also to take the brand of the author's school and the personal brand of the author into classrooms and universities and business schools around the world. And outside of education, it also develops business relationships between the business and the case author themselves, which starts to offer the opportunity for the author to go back into the business and develop further opportunities for research. So what of case authors? What is their individual motivation for writing the case? In talking to many case authors at conferences and at awards presentations and in social events, what I have pinpointed is that the main objective for most case authors is to achieve learning outcomes in their own classroom. They write it for themselves and for their own students, and often it's because they want to teach something in their classroom with a particular angle that's personal to them and which they can't find other materials that are up to the task. So that triggers them and encourages them to write their own case. The context in which they write that case is their own course or module and their students, and also the connections that they have, their own personal connections with practitioners in business. And one of the motivations is that they may want to develop those connections and strengthen them. I've talked so far about the motivation behind creating the case itself. I also want to add some comments about the importance and the strength that a good teaching note brings to the case. The two operate in tandem. We see the teaching note as being essential, so that we now only accept cases that have teaching notes. Some authors I know write the teaching note before they write the case and use it as a kind of guide that helps them keep on track when they're writing the case. The teaching note sets out the learning objectives behind the case. It sets out things that are supportive of teaching, like board plans, areas that students often really engage with. It links the case to academic theory. It gives some additional background for the teacher about the performance of the business and the way the solutions that the business found to the problems that are confronted in the class or in the case. And it also indicates the appropriate student categories and level at which the case can be taught most effectively. And most importantly of all, perhaps, it shares the author's experience of their own teaching with the case. All of those combine to give a teacher taking up the case a real insight into the motivation behind it, the links between the business and academic practice, and a platform in which they can be comfortable standing in front of a class of students, facilitating their discussion as they move through the investigation of the case and reach their own conclusions about it. So the teaching note is really not an add-on, it's an essential working partner with the case. So having set the context and the different elements of the case and the motivation behind writing the case, now we can start to explore the trends that are emerging in current case writing. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the first of those is that cases are now being written to be taught in online and hybrid classrooms. Online classrooms, like we're experiencing here, is where everyone is online and joining from a distance. A hybrid classroom is one where some people are in the classroom and others are joining online. And cases now, before the pandemic, one of the criticisms of the case method was that it couldn't be taught online. People thought that cases had to be taught and discussed within a classroom, face to face, and not just any classroom, but a classroom that's specially designed and built for the case method. In fact, the experience of most case teachers during the lockdown and the response to the pandemic is that cases work very effectively online and in hybrid classroom settings. There's something about the approach of the case method where it is less hierarchical, it encourages participation, it has very dynamic levels of engagement that make it appropriate for online use, much more than straight face-to-face extended lectures. So the case method has been shown in that experience to work really well. But it also requires adaptation and thoughtfulness and different resourcing. And the cases that are being written as a result reflect that. What we find is that cases that are written for those circumstances tend to be shorter, because the attention span in reading online is reduced, so the cases are shorter. They are often chunked, and by that I mean they are subdivided into smaller sub portions that students may work on individually and separately from the case as a whole. So the structure of the case is affected, and it's much more like, I guess perhaps if you could draw a parallel between a short story and a newspaper article, where the newspaper article may have different sections, and the short story is more like continuous prose. We also find that there's a greater use of integrated media in cases that are written for online, so that the online technology gives case writers the opportunity to integrate other elements from different media, short video clips, interviews with the participants, still images, representative images and samples of goods and advertising, for example, from the company, all of which combine to give a better, more immersive experience for students in the online classroom. And they're structured differently as well. So rather than having, the case teacher may want an extended session in which the case is discussed at length, with all the students participating at the same time, which is a synchronous session. But the teacher may also wish to have some asynchronous sessions where students work separately or in smaller groups, in which the class is structured into smaller groups. And the case structure reflects that as well. So you may introduce some individual or group exercises, or some polls into the body of the case. And to support that, that has also had an impact. A new trend is coming that impacts on the teaching note, so that the teaching notes are now becoming multifunctional, and as well as giving advice on how best to teach the case in a face-to-face classroom, they're now increasingly giving advice on how to teach the case in an online or hybrid classroom. There are some new trends emerging around the format of the case as well. Comic strip cases are becoming more popular, and one of the leaders in that is from ICFE, the sadly no longer with us, the great case writer Deborah Bitim Purkayastha, has several very popular comic strip style cases which students really like, and which they engage in really strongly, and which communicate by a combination of superhero style graphics and minimal text. And it's a very clever combination which really engages and gets the information across in a very succinct and shortened form, very compact case. Multimedia is growing, and we can see multimedia cases coming out of schools like INSEAD and IE in Madrid. Integrated media is becoming more affordable and more practical alternative and opportunity for academics working alone. And there, by integrated media, I mean basically a text case with some elements of video and graphic and photographs in it. And virtual reality cases are also starting to emerge at schools like Neoma in France, where students wear a virtual reality headset, a bit like they wear when they're playing a video game, and they can walk around the environment that they're asked to inhabit as part of it.
May we request you all to go on mute?
And this is another really strongly emerging trend, which is that many case writers are writing about local businesses and moving away from that focus that they had on multinationals and on CEO level multinationals. Many students find it easier to engage with cases that where the protagonists are like themselves, perhaps recent graduates from the school, certainly setting up local businesses that they're familiar with. And those local cases actually travel very well, so we find that they're very popular. Indian cases, for example, are very popular in business schools in America, and that is partly because teachers are looking for cases with unfamiliar backgrounds, so that their students are really stretched, and they also find it more difficult to find online solutions to the case. And secondly, because with international students moving to study in different countries, or with online moving to study with business schools that are located in different countries, even though the students remain at home, some of those international students find it quite intimidating to speak in front of a new audience in a large case classroom. But having a local case with a brand that they're familiar with gives them confidence and a different status as an expert, because they understand and know the circumstances, and they're more familiar with the company than the other students in the classroom. And so some teachers like to use those cases as a way of supporting international students as they start to integrate into international classrooms. Here are some topics that are very hot at the moment and are really trending very strongly. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are very popular, and there are many cases in that, and the Financial Times is in the middle of running a competition to identify leading and most effective cases dealing with some of the SDGs, and ones that are particularly popular are around climate change, a huge challenge for the world as a whole, sustainability, both sustainable business and sustainable impact from the business, and diversity, looking at protagonists that are more diverse and reflect the diversity of the global and the local student cohorts. I thought it might be interesting to share, and you'd find it useful to have a look at this analysis, this infographic, exploring the Case Centre Awards and competitions in 2021. We run a series of annual awards and competitions, and this year it's very interesting. So the winning authors this year came from 18 schools in 10 different countries, and what I'm particularly pleased and delighted to see is that 73% of our winners were first-time winners, and that the gender was starting to approach something like parity. So 39% were female and 61% of our authors were male. We can see on the bottom left the winning schools and where the first-time winners came from, and quite a good balance between first-time winning schools and schools that had won previously. So in entering our competitions, you can see that if you win, you are really outstanding company. If we look at the featured companies, you'll recognize the logos there. And then the bottom right-hand quadrant, we can start to see what it is about a case and what's trending that makes it really popular and award-winning. 93% of our award winners have a teaching note. 20% have a translation. The gender of the protagonists is still not what it could be, but is starting to become more balanced. So 31% of protagonists were female, 69% male. and you may be interested in looking at the length of the case. So quite a good spread actually. 47% of the winners were between 11 and 20 pages, 40% were over 20 pages, and 13% were less than 10 pages. So we're starting to see a trend towards shorter cases emerge. And these are not our award-winning cases, but our best-selling cases. So these really are judged by faculty members in schools around the world, choosing to spread and spend their very precious budgets on particular cases. So I feel that's a kind of peer review, and we can learn something from what they choose to select and teach in their classrooms. Here we have 328 authors from 40 schools in 13 countries. I mentioned Deborah Patim earlier. It was a great loss when he died during COVID, and we miss him greatly. But if you're looking at cases and you're starting to write cases for the first time, you can do no better than read some of Deborah Patim's cases and analyze them and build some of his approaches into your own writing habits. Again, 93% of all those best-selling cases come with a teaching note. 34% of the best-selling cases are translated into other languages, and this is interesting, 15%, and this has been growing for a couple of years, now have some other element, video or software. And that video or software can be quite informal. It could be a link to a YouTube clip, not necessarily a video that's been created at a high professional and very expensive standard. There is definitely a shelf life to cases. Many cases of the most popular and best-selling cases, 35% of them have been published within the last 5 years. And there the impact of length is even greater. So 67% of our top 100 best-selling cases are between 6 and 20 pages. Only 23% are longer than 20 pages. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see some of the trends that are affecting the choice of topic and business sector that case writers are choosing and which are more popular. These are the cases that academics around the world see as being most relevant and most popular and working best with students in their classrooms. So the challenge, I think, and I really am delighted to be part of this workshop and to speak briefly. This is my last slide, so I'll hand over to Ketan to take us forward now. But the challenge, I think, is to write cases that are individual, that reflect your personality, your students, your curriculum, and your personal business networks, but which speak to everyone, that can travel well, because that's how you can increase the impact of your case writing by having it distributed to schools outside of your own school. So I think that the cases, the most successful cases, converse with students, engage students, and encourage students to participate in the class discussion. And that's what I hope that you can do in this workshop, is to converse with each other and with Ketan as a very experienced and respected case writer himself, to engage with the process and be open to the learning and to participate. And I wish you every success with the skills that you develop in the workshop and the application of them, and with completing your cases.
Good to see you in this panel discussion, and I'm really pleased and delighted to have these hands-on leaders who have proved themselves in their companies, in their field, in their businesses, and fortunately all have been also associated with the management education. They have gone through management education in the past, and also have been continuously engaged in corporate learning for themselves as well as their team members. So it's wonderful to have all these corporate leaders with us, and we would like to hear from them their views about the application of the case studies in the industry context, in the employability skills, which way industry and academia, which way case method and case studies can help to bridge the gap between industry and academics. So we will have a very interesting and exciting discussion. So request all panel members to share your views on all the questions which will be there. You can also add to some of the other panel members' views as well. So feel free. I will be sharing one by one questions on the screen, and then you can share your views. So the first question is that I'm sure you all have been using case studies in your decision making, in corporate training, in marketing communication, in research, and also in the problem solving, because it is your everyday's endeavor to solve business challenges and problems. So how these case studies actually helped you and your team or your organization in the past? Maybe these case studies may not have been written from the teaching case point of view, but I'm sure that you always ask to your team members or talk about business case or a case study. So could you elaborate on these aspects, how useful the case studies are in your business? Yes.
All right, maybe I can take a first stab here. Yes. Okay. So let's first understand what case study is all about. And I was fortunate enough to listen to Professor Richard McCracken, and he definitely pointed out some of the highlights of case study and some of the challenges as well. Those are there today, and everybody is trying to work out some of those challenges too. So basically, the case study is about learning by doing. The usual methodology that we have been using in case of learning is basically memorizing and examinations and stuff, whereas case study wants you to actually learn the concepts and apply those for the group discussion, for basically challenging the hypothesis and blah blah blah. I won't get into much of those details, but as you graduate from the college to the industry, some of those skills do really help, but they have to be applied in different ways. So as you rightly said, Professor Gandhi, is case studies in the corporate world or the work function, they actually change to like a business case. If you want to get millions of dollars from your CEO, you have to build that case. Even as a leader, for example, you want to take a hard and tough decision, considering the current scenarios, just an example, you will have to make sure that everybody understands the repercussions of that particular difficult decision. And at times you want people to take that decision on your behalf. So basically you become the facilitator of that case, and you ensure that the outcome comes from your teams exactly the way you want it. That's probably one way of application of case studies in the corporate or the work environment. Basically, collective decision making is one use. for greater acceptance, of course, which is the most important thing, right? If you want a greater acceptance, you have to have those discussions. And secondly, problem solving in the shorter team sizes, it becomes very, very useful tool as far as case study methodology.
Maybe I could go next. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I agree with everything that Jayant said. I'll probably add a little more color based on my experiences. And the simple answer is yes. Pretty much in every single aspect of our day-to-day business life, we end up using case study as is, or a form of a case study, if you will. I'll give a couple of broad examples and we can discuss the detail during the session. If I take our interaction on the demand side, right? So most of our interactions with either the clients or partners who help us form solution which will solve business problem. So those are the different varieties of transaction we go through during the day. And in pretty much each of those varieties, case study kind of becomes very integral. We may not call it case study in day-to-day life, but there are simple examples when we get in front of clients, right? We are trying to solve a particular problem and we are in the process of pursuing client to give that piece of work to us. Case study is kind of a checkbox, right? Where client would come and say, hey, show me where else you have done something similar, either exactly same in the similar industry or maybe in a different industry. What kind of complexities you handle, right? So when you are trying to answer some of this credibility kind of questions, you sharing your past experiences, the scale, the size, and some of the other nuances involved, right? It becomes a very handy tool to establish credibility, because obviously client is talking to few of the options available in the market. And when everything else becomes equal, this kind of differentiates, saying that, hey, looks like these are the guys who have done something very similar to my need, right? And at times it makes client aware of, you know, what they need to be aware of. A lot of time when you're doing it for the first time, you don't know what you don't know. And this kind of makes you aware, saying, hey, this is what went wrong for somebody else and looks like I am not prepared for it either, right? So I need to provide for that in my spending plan, my program plan, and a lot of other things, right? From change management for it. So I think that's from the demand side. On the supply side, as I think Richard said, and as Jen said as well, especially, I think it's pretty much true in the product space as well, but in product space, at least you can touch and feel the product. But when you are on the services side, it's very intangible. And a lot of time services rendered through the individuals like you and me. So when client has to decide that the particular individual is the right individual for my need, right? Whatever may be the commercial construct, right? You may still be engaged in an outcome-based scenario. The individual who are part of the team to make it happen is a very critical aspect from the decision-making point of view. And hence we have to decide, right? Whether it is a recruitment, whether it is the existing team, but getting screened through in terms of saying, hey, is it Peter or Paul in terms of being part of a particular initiative? Sometimes this kind of tools and methods and approaches decide saying, hey, person A is more suited, everything else being equal, right? It's not a question of selection per se, but who is more conditioned to a given operating environment, and hence on supply side as well, it's a very useful factor.
Yes,
Yeah, I would just like to speak from the manufacturing point of view. See, what I believe is that, case studies are not necessarily when what is all written down and we sit down and discuss it. As an example, in our plant, what we have a general practice is every week or 10 days, we pick up one scenario where we, failure has happened, and we use that and discuss that what are the learnings out of this. So, say suppose the die fitment has gone wrong, and from that, so how it was solved, that is a separate issue, but how best it could have been done and how best it could have been avoided, we discuss it a week or 10 days later, and we do the necessary changes in terms of the responsibilities or the authorities or the way we approach the subject or the person responsible for that. So on a daily basis, some situation will definitely come up to you, which you can use as a case to deal with your team and to generate the learnings out of that failure, and by failure, even a success. That what are the learnings that what are the things that we did right, so that we do it again in future also, wherever it is applicable. So case study is not only on pen and paper, it's almost day-to-day basis, every day in front of you. How you can pick and choose the right one to pass on a right message to the organization.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Bajpai.
So I would like to go with like what everyone has said is exactly right. But my reach to case study would be like, normally when I'm running a service line and I'm trying to pitch a proposal to a customer, like what Gandharv also said, like this is where it really translates into the revenue aspect of a growth of an industry. Okay, so if I want to look at one segment and I want to grow that segment or a technology, I would like to reach out to a customer and say that, okay, this is what my capability stands. I have this many certified people, XYZ, whatever, blah, blah. But client would like to look at me and saying that what you have done in this area. Okay, this is where the translation of the work which I have done to improve the ROI part, or the benefit I've been passed for using this technology, that has to be translated and that has to be conveyed to the customer. This is where the case study really forms the rule. Okay, it really helps us to reach the customer and show them that, okay, this is where I come from and I can transform your business. Okay, so I would really use case study most of the time in my capability or my proposal kind of areas. And I'll tell you, I have utilized it and I have won many projects based on case study. So it is a wonderful and the best tool to be used in this scenario. Okay, that's it from my side.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for your very detailed answer and sharing your best practices, what you've been doing.
Just one thing, Professor Gandhi, I want to add, and I believe there are lots of MBA students also listening to this, so I wanted to share something for them as well. Today, especially in the Western world, it could be Europe or even Americas, there is a huge demand for product managers, especially, and they are interestingly looking for MBAs typically, and case studies, methodologies, especially business writing is deeply used by product managers. So hallelujah, I would suggest just make sure that you get better at this skill.
Okay, yeah, one of the requirement in the industry at least last 10 years has been every employee or everyone should be more creative, more innovative. And innovation is a kind of a buzzword which is being used very frequently. So how can a case study can help students or industry executives to become more innovative? What is your view on that?
Should I go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
So how I would like to go with a simple case. Okay, so we were trying to pitch in one of major banks in Australia for a proposal, where we were trying to say to them, okay, we are the grandmaster, we know everything about the specific domain, and we will be able to transform your business. Okay, and that is when we had the first like ice-breaking session with the client, and they came up, okay, let's do something. And when we sat with them, we came to know that they were knowing more than what we were knowing about that module. Okay, so it's like a new technology, and we checked all our different accounts and peers and all that. We couldn't find a single case study here, okay, or rather a single implementation which was done in that area. So now this was the time where we have to showcase our capability and also transform it. This is where I'll tell you, I have a team of MBA grads who report to me directly. Okay, and like I have 400 other people who report to me. That's a different story, but that's a delivery. But these grads are good guys. I told them, let's go on, let's search, let's find out some case studies, something which people have done in these areas, and let us come up with something. And I'll tell you, it was like a competition between these grads, and two people team, they came up with beautiful ideas in this module, how we can transform that one specific module. And of which one of the guys came up with an idea of gamification. And I'll tell you, one of the banks in South Africa had done that gamification for those modules. Okay, so it really transformed. Then we created a case study out of it, and we presented, this is what we are trying to do for you and all. And I'll tell you, it was through. So I'll tell you, there would be a time when there will be a limitation of a knowledge, okay, or there is a new technology which is trying to pick up or speak up rather. At that time, you would have to use your creative sense and try to build a solution which will help the customer. And there should be a spark in that. And I think so. Case study really hits there. It really reaches there. That is what I feel.
Okay.
And these grads can really help us. Thank you. Yeah.
If I could add my perspective to what Anil just said, and it's very useful tool, right? So I think there's probably no better way of saying than what Anil said. But pretty much again, right, both from external scenarios and internal scenarios, right? It's a very useful tool which gets applied on a day-to-day basis. For example, nowadays, most of you are aware, a lot of service providers would have some form of a collaboratory, if you will, right? Where client and the service provider get together physically, virtually, obviously working around all the constraints from the pandemic point of view. But that's the place where we ideate and innovate together, right? It could be launch of a new service, or it could be completely reimagining the existing service. And in that scenario, we would want to go probably blue sky thinking, right? As constraint-less as possible and overcome some of the existing design consideration for whatever reason, right? Maybe they were relevant at that point in time when the service was launched, but maybe now there are better ways, better regulatory aspects, better technologies available. So it pretty much makes people aware of the art of possible, as we say, right? So absolutely very useful tool in terms of reimagining the user journeys, figuring out the happy path, as we call it, but also figuring out not so happy path, right? How are we prepared for any unusual scenarios, right? Which may impact the moment of truth as far as the consumer or the end customer is concerned. From the internal point of view, right? We are talking about at least some of these businesses which are huge, right? We are talking about 4 billion, 5 billion kind of a quarterly run rate. And hence the amount of different roles, the cultural background, etc. involved is quite diverse, right? We are talking about 200,000, 300,000, 500,000 people organization. So in that scenario, when we bring about internal change, right, in order to constantly keep ourselves competitive in the marketplace, right, we go through a lot of org designs and changes. Now, when you do something which is fundamentally impacting your customer, you obviously want to think through as a CEO, saying, hey, am I doing something which is going to disrupt my as-is business, which is running fine? And even in that situation, right, this case study kind of approach helps a lot, because you think through saying, hey, how the service internally would be rendered, who all needs to be kept in the loop, what would be the funding, what would be the sizing, what are the change management aspects, right? So it makes you open up to some of this aspects that you need to think through, and then maybe you can still pilot it, you may still do proof of concept, and then finally launch it, right? So both, again, from internal and external scenario point of view, very useful tool when it comes to ideation and innovation.
Just one point I would like to add over here, since there are many professors also over here. See, generally when we handle a case study, and especially keeping the creativity and the innovation point in mind, we as a person who is conducting the group should be able to identify and motivate people to come up with the innovative and the creative ideas. Normally what happens is when somebody is coming up with something new and out of the box, if it doesn't fit in our thought process, we brush it aside. But that is what we need to be alerted about, that whenever something absolutely random and out of the box comes, we should welcome it, and we should see whether that should be encouraged or not, rather than just brushing it aside. So
Right.
just a point to add over there.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. One very brief point is basically case systems. When you look at it, it's not just about creativity or innovation. It is about how you articulate that information in front of key stakeholders. And that articulation today has become very, very important. Some people name it as storytelling and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you hear that, right? So basically, socializing skills are also equally important. And in my view, I think case study methodology, the way it's been taught, the way interactions do happen, they promote some of these employability skills today to the corporate, which is like a big mess. However, case study alone, in my view, does not really promote the innovation and creativity. As we just heard, that there are so many things that are associated, especially if you have to look at the leadership style in the organization, whether it is really conducive or not. Like, for example, whether it is transformational or transactional. A lot of top leaders, they've become transactionals. You just get me this output and that's it, done deal. You just don't promote innovation and stuff. So even though you have some good people around, some of these things, they really need to be looked into in a deep fashion, in my view. And go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, one of the important skill that everyone emphasized today is how to learn. And from industry perspective, what do you think? How important it is how to learn skill? And what teachers and corporate trainers can do to help students and participants through teaching method and the processes to improve the learning skills? Yes. Karjat, will you go first?
Sure. So again, right, I think some of this are kind of universal truth kind of a statement, right? Can't agree more in terms of the importance of some of this in real life. And obviously the business world is very competitive. We all know that. So it's a day-to-day struggle as well as endeavor to make sure that we are at the forefront of what we do, right? And a lot of time the problems that we come across are new for everybody. For example, when pandemic happened, right, we changed our ways of working almost overnight, right? And nobody had anticipated that. So in that situation, for example, in the earlier world, talking to the industry that I belong to, if we were designing something new for our client, right, we had a very specific operating model. The individuals will get together physically. People would travel from all over the place, right? So travel and being physically together was a very integral to our operating model. And from there, almost overnight, we became virtual, right? And at that time, somebody had said that, hey, I would come and discuss how we'll implement a particular idea over Microsoft Teams or Zoom call, right? People would have laughed at me. But now it's like business as usual, it's given. So applying what we know in a new context, under new regulatory environment, under new industry, and then improvising it. Sometimes it could be a very fundamentally different thinking. Sometimes it is incremental, as the case may be. It's absolutely, it's kind of a very important skills. And more so, irrespective of which level you are at the organization, right? What role you are playing. It's kind of the whole team, whole organization gives that experience to the client. And that decides whether you survive or you become irrelevant in the marketplace. So absolutely important skills. From students and teachers' point of view, right? I think last couple of decades that I've been in industry, even if the industry is same, right? The kind of services we used to take to the market, the way they were packaged, the commercial construct around it, obviously goes through day-to-day change. And in that context, right, always keeping yourself aligned to the market needs, right? And sometimes if it's not getting disrupted, you disrupting it yourselves to make sure that you are remaining ahead of your peers and your competitors. And in that context, right, it would be combination, right? Case study obviously is one of the important tools. Self-learning is obviously one of the important tools. Understanding, I think Jen mentioned about appreciating, and I think Devang talked about it as well, right? Appreciating different point of view. A lot of time it happens in our day-to-day life that we get ideas from a very unexpected quarter, right? Somebody would have made a very completely irrelevant comment. And then when you think of it, right, you're driving back home and then you suddenly realize that, hey, how about I applying that into my current problem, right? Completely unrelated. But that gives you that learning, right, in terms of connecting these dots. So that's how I see it in terms of either improvising it on an incremental basis or launching something, and not necessarily only from services point of view, right? It also involves the ways and means in terms of we within the organization get some of this efficiencies and effectiveness through our day-to-day SOPs.
Okay.
I would like to add here, mainly from the teaching perspective, basically just the case study alone, the way it's been taught, and the way sometimes students understand, you just come prepared, discuss. I think the most important aspect is, and which is fundamental, is understanding those concepts, the underlying concepts. If you do, as a student, if you do not know those concepts, you won't be able to participate in the case study. There are so many people who are introverts, and probably case study methodology becomes like a difficult model for their studies. So professors would need to look at some of those aspects as well while incorporating some of the case study discussions out there. Now, how these are useful in the industry, because when you go to the industry, you get all sorts of people. Some are extroverts, they want to really speak up. Some are introverts, as I just mentioned about, right? So I think the focus should be on the fundamental things. At the same time, focus should be how you articulate your opinions and stuff like that, which becomes extremely critical. And case study methodology, in my view, makes you more independent and helps you to take quick risks, rather, which is today's need. And I think that's really done pretty well through the case study methodology.
Okay.
Yeah, I can just come in for one or two lines. So how this will translate? Like, I'll tell you, when I was reading MBA, I was going through the different studies and things like that, the books and subjects. I could relate it directly to my work. Okay, this is the industry perspective or how it can be picked up. Very simple. Like, there are so many movies, there are so many reading. You can go on reading in articles in Economic Times and Business Standards or wherever, and you can pick up some specific case studies, very specific. Like we talk about connecting dots, or we can talk about movie like Founders or any other movies, and then we pick up that this is what the skill is required for translating this specific subject into an application. And I think so anybody in student wise and this new generation specifically would relate to it. I think so we should, and I think so teachers are doing more right now, that they have to look at the application aspect of it. Okay, if you're reading any of the concepts, like if you're talking about people with single charger, okay, why that single charger should be there for the mobile phone. If you talk about those case studies or applications, I think so it will really relate to the students. They will pick up the concepts quickly, and then when they have a problem, they will be able to solve it much better. This is the best tool to do that. Thank you.
Okay. What about learning skills in manufacturing sector, Mr. Deva? there are three other skills or traits which are very, very important for any corporate employees: cognitive skills, interpersonal skills, and leadership skills. And these have been identified as a foundational skills that anyone should have. And this is being taken care during recruitment or also maybe during the career growth. So what should faculty members, students and universities should do to help students to develop and sharpen these skills along with the subject matter knowledge? What do you think?
So from my perspective,
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
okay.
Yeah, Mr. Devan, you were mute. Yeah, now we're
Okay. Yeah. So see, generally, whatever the case study we are doing is in the form of a group, and whenever a group is working together, the people's interpersonal skills develop, and by default, any one person who's having a better control over that subject will end up becoming the leader in that group. So his leadership skills are developed, and in an organization, if you want to succeed, it is equally important to be a follower. So whenever you are participating in a group and somebody has taken up the leadership role, it's very important the other 3 or 4 or 5 people become a good follower. So you give your points, you discuss, but ultimately you need to follow what is being decided and implement that. So whenever a case study is being held, it kind of exemplifies this, and it develops the skills both as a leadership and as a good follower, and also the interpersonal skills of communicating with your colleagues, your seniors and your juniors. Yeah.
right.
I would beg to differ a little bit on the followership aspect, by the way.
Yeah.
Because in my view, I think the success would be promoted only if there is open culture and not just following somebody or something of that sort. But in my view, I think the case studies, especially the way those are being conducted, like debates, group discussions, group project activities, all those kind of things that students learn during the college, they are directly useful or applied in the corporate world. I would say enterprise world as well. A lot of companies, they do internal research now, and some of these things, some of the skills that they learn through case study methodology become extremely important. You need to definitely have a lot of connect with other people. So I was reading a document which was published on Harvard Business Review as to how these researchers and mostly some of these Nobel laureates, scientists, how they conduct the research basically. So you can't be sitting idle. I'm sorry, not idle. What I mean is you can't be sitting in a room without communicating with anybody and just think through it. You basically have to go out. There is one phase of it. You got to interact with people, understand what the problem, come back, and then you need to sit literally by yourself, think about it, and then come out with the solution. But the main aspect after that is how you communicate with the outer world again. So there are 3 phases. You be communicative, you be collaborative, but come back again, confine, think, synthesize, and then go back again and explain. So all these things are very, very important aspects, are directly related in the corporate world as well today.
I would just want to come in to clarify what I exactly meant by being a good follower. Yeah, I'll just give you a live scenario. So for example, if a die is come under a problem and a group of 5 people have finally decided that the die requires a 5 mm cut, then if the operator thinks differently and he no boss, mere ko to lagta hai ki 3 mm cut is good enough, he does a 3 mm cut of the die, and the die goes back, and again everybody is under the impression that a 5 mm cut has been given, and again there is a mismatch, and after a day's work they come back to realize that boss, we decided 5 mm but the cut was done of 3 mm. And in the manufacturing line this happens on a regular basis. So which is what I mean when a group has taken a decision, you speak up when the discussion is happening. But once, whether right or wrong, whether you agree with it or whether you don't agree with it, but if a decision has been taken, you implement it so that everybody is on the same page and thinking that this is what has been done and this is where we need to move from here. Yeah, just to clarify that.
Got it. No, thank you. Yeah. I didn't mean to offend you, Mr.
Yeah,
Gandhi.
no, that's fine. Just many people are listening, so we would want to clarify what exactly I meant, and I agree with what you said. Yeah. That's fine. None of us here to offend anybody. You're just putting our point.
Oh yeah.
I will come here to. I was reading long back. I read one small article where a soldier. They were talking about soldiers. Okay, so they were saying the soldier should be either a follower or a leader, and I loved that part because if you see, that's exactly what Devang is trying to say. Either you listen, or if you're a leader, or at that point of time, you're the captain of the ship, you have to take the decision to be the leader. And if you're somebody you are listening to, or you have that, be the follower, go point by point, do the process and execute it. So this is how soldiers or army really execute. They could build a bridge in 15 days or so because of that specific skill. That's a very good skill rather. I'll go back to the question part, the cognitive and the interpersonal. Normally, I read a lot of books, and there I came across one book called as $1 Trillion Coach. Okay, now this guy, the coach, was specifically a basketball coach, and when he died, whole of the California leaders were there, like Eric Smith and Google Head and everybody was following them, like Apple Head and all. Because he had given so much to the organizations, how he has translated work. The main thing, what I could see as a leader, and he imprinted that everywhere in all these big organizations, even if he came from the basketball. So my thing is, when you are a leader, when you are learning, when you should pick up all the skills which come across, your interpersonal skills. You should go around, see what, if you have been participating in some sports, the skills what you require from there, or you earn it, you should utilize it while you go ahead. So my suggestions to the students and everybody would be, all the skills, let it be anything, learn it, see that how you can build on it. Okay, only books won't help you, only management studies won't help you. You need to go around, check, so that when you reach the real podium, you will be able to execute correctly. Okay, and all the skills will help you. So that is what my suggestion would go with. Thank you.
I'll just add a couple of cents from my side on my take on the mix. And obviously, all three skill sets are critical. I think the mix changes, right, depending on the role that you play. A lot of time it happens in a client environment that there are 5 people from your organization in a particular conversation, right, for the need of that scenario. But the person who drives the relationship, right, maybe hierarchy-wise, maybe senior to you, junior to you. So in that complex environment, right, what role you are playing, right? Because at the end of the day, you are there to meet the objective. You are not there to prove yourself right or wrong vis-a-vis others. And in that scenario, whether you are using your interpersonal skills more because you are playing more of a role of a facilitator than a decision maker, for example, versus a very difficult scenario where probably nobody wants to take a difficult call and you are the leader and you have to call the shot, not knowing what the outcome may be because it's a very mission critical environment. So I think I agree with Anil, right? Saying interpersonal skills, absolutely, it's like a common minimum denominator. No matter what role, what scenario, it will always come handy with a professional environment or personal environment. But other set of skills you can kind of amplify or kind of tone down depending on what you're trying to achieve, right? And a lot of time what happens, especially as we grow older in the industry, a lot of time we wear our designation on our shoulder, right? And then that probably creates more problem. So I think from teacher's point of view, student point of view, learning all the skills, obviously there are people who are born leaders, there are people who are more born cognitive, if you will. So having the right balance, but then having an understanding of the assessment saying, hey, for this scenario, what is my role? And which skill I play on, I play to my strength, and not only my strength, the collective strength of the group in that scenario. I think that would probably be much more relevant from learning point.
Okay. I have many questions, but I would like participants to raise few questions, because this is a great opportunity for all of the participants to interact with the corporate leaders. So if there are any questions from any of the participants or any of the any person attending this session, please feel free to raise your question. Either you unmute yourself or you put your comment in the chat box. Yes, Mr. Nishant, go ahead.
Hello, sir. So it's quite a scene that good leaders are usually good orators and they have excellent interpersonal skills. But at somewhere we have lost such introverts who are good decision makers. I mean, the people who are good decision makers do not follow at times the leadership roles. So what is your take on this? Do we lose these persons because of lack of communication? And how could a leader make use of such people in an organization?
If I can attempt to answer that, Nishant. See, I guess it depends, right? Probably there's no easy answer. Now, I agree with you that an excellent leader who is probably an introvert and for some reason, right, because of the personal preference of an individual to be little introvert, if you are not able to motivate or you are not able to articulate your perspective, right, during the decision making or a lot of time tough situation, you may not be able to motivate the team around you to rally behind the idea or the decision, like Devang talked about, right? So I think probably there's no right or wrong, right? People do realize, I've seen in my years in industry that people have changed. Myself, right? I consider myself introvert, right? And then over a period of time, especially I spent a lot of my time into consulting business, right? Where people, the client, they look up to you. And there are a lot of interaction that happens outside the office, right? You meet somebody for a coffee, you meet somebody for a dinner, and a lot of the formal work we are doing during the office hours, right, kind of gets, let's say you have a big presentation tomorrow about a strategy that you are consulting client on. And before you actually make a presentation to the board or the decision-making group, you are trying to socialize that to 5 different people, right? And at that point, if I am introvert, right, and I'm not able to convey saying, hey, why I'm recommending what I'm recommending, exactly, we can very well anticipate the outcome of that consulting exercise. So yeah, depending on the role, if the role demands that you have to acquire certain skills, it doesn't come to you naturally, I think, or you have to figure out a role where you can play to your strength and your preferences, which in my opinion happens very less often. It does happen, but not that frequent. So that's just my take on it.
Just to draw an analogy to that, see, you may, if we take cricket, you may be a fantastic batsman, but can you be in the team if you are bad at taking catches or if you are a very, very poor fielder? So any leadership role, it is not just one single quality that is required, say decision making, or you have to lead the team or lead the group of people. So it's a bundle of qualities that is required to be able to perform your job, that is to lead the group. So just being a good decision maker and not being able to communicate the decision well to your team, or not being able to motivate your team in the right direction, I mean, you would not be able to accomplish your goals as a leader.
See, stepping outside the comfort zone is the most important, I would say, criteria for being a leader or being successful. So anybody would have to do that if you want to be a successful person. So when it comes to being introvert, obviously there are so many things are kind of difficult, but you got to really step out of that for sure. There is no escape.
Okay.
In simple terms.
Any other question from participants? Otherwise, the panel member can look at this question. Employability skill gap has been identified as one of the major reasons that students or graduates are finding it very difficult to get a right job. So, and you are in the industry, you are also recruiting number of people, you are conducting a lot of interviews. what should be done by all stakeholders to bridge this gap and to improve the employability skills?
Yeah.
Can I take
Mr.
it?
Gandhi? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
See, this is one of the glaring challenges that is there in front of both the industry as well as the education community. And just one of the examples that I can share with you, in Jamshedpur we have a XIT college, Xavier Institute of Technical Education. They're more into the BBA and BCom and all. What they have done is very recently they have formed a industry innovation council, wherein they've taken about 8 or 9 members from different trades and different industries, and I'm also one of the part of that group. And every month we are meeting up and suggesting and telling the college that what they can do so that the student preparedness of the students is much relevant to the industry that wants to absorb them once their education is over. And as a result of this, what has happened is where the professor, the principal, they recently started for the BCom and the BBA graduating students in the 5th year. What they've introduced is a 4-hour internship program. So the gap that was when the student passes out and he is like a absolute fresher into our office, and he is just not knowing what is happening and what is going around, and what he has learned is not able to apply anything initially. So with this into 4-hour internship program, they are doing their curriculum in the morning, and 4 hours and the industry has absorbed them, and they are actually being put to do things like paper filing and doing attendance marking and all that. That's the reality of life. When you take up your job, you might be learning big things when you are in college, but when you start right at the basic. So they get the exposure right away. The benefit of the second benefit, the industry over here, which was always struggling, to get our office manpower in terms of accounting and all that, suddenly realized that we have never looked at this college as our, for recruitment. And within the 1 month itself, during this festive season, they've done 10 placements within the industry. So this is one thing I would suggest to the colleges and to all the education fraternity, that to address this problem, you form a group where you can you interact and hobnob with the industry people to reduce this gap of preparing the students for being absorbed into the industry. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so one of the last question from my side, because we have also a time constraint and I know how busy you all are. Would you like to share any of your own case writing experience? Because we have many aspiring case writers in this group, and how you also started writing the case studies for industry as well as for teaching purpose. Would you like to share and motivate the aspiring case writers?
Okay, I'll go first here. So,
Yes.
So there are 2 ways of case writing. Okay, one with very elaborative and a very in a process form. Okay, so which is more about talking about the complete story and then coming out of what you want to deduce out of it. Okay, this is something which I learned from Ketan sir. Okay, so we had a session and then he went and helped us how to build that story. Okay, so that is one of the best things which I had. But like I go back to now my the industry kind of thing, where we have just one like I'll tell you, when I talk to C-level guys, they have like 6 minutes, 3 minutes, something like that, which we have. Okay, so I have just one slide where I have to give everything onto them. It's like a summary which we talk about story, coming up with what benefits it will pass and things. So depending on the audience also, we have to make sure our case study is translating that. Okay, so if we are writing for academicians or students or a larger mass, we should write in a different format. And then when it comes to a specific problem area we are trying to help industry leader, probably we have to be a very different way we have to present it. So this is what I feel, but I would like to people to go for and understand how to do this. this is one of the finest skills you can acquire in this scenario, and it really helps us further. Thank you.
In my case, I'm been actually on both sides of the table. In the current role, I work with several partners where multi-million dollars contracts we negotiate, and I have to definitely provide them the exact story about the current affairs and where exactly we need help. So basically, that is part of business case writing, I would say, or RFIs in the purchasing world, if you would have heard, right? So this is again classic example of case writing. So when you are able to articulate your problem better, you will get a better solution, and that's what is the most important aspect of this one. So whichever side you are on the table. So I think it has helped in a way to get the exact solution from the partners, save millions of dollars through that multi-million dollar contracts that I negotiate typically. And on the other side of it, when I'm able to pitch the solution, I know exactly what the customer has been looking for. And if there are any gaps, we can either highlight those gaps and we can provide some aspects as to how we can improve and do better, versus we just don't have those and we'll just build those capabilities over time with the help of the customer. And I just heard a while ago, I think it was Mr. Nathwani before, sometimes the customer knows more, or rather it was Mr. Bajpai, customer sometimes knows much more than you if you're trying to sell something. And those are certain areas where you need to be very, very careful when you give something in writing to the customer. Few cents.
My quick addition to this, right? In this entire exercise, I think, at least for me, what has worked more often than not is an element of simulation. Whether it's a known problem where you're just trying to get perfection out of the solution, or it's an unknown problem where probably nobody has a clear view in terms of what would work and what wouldn't. But as part of this case writing or problem solving or innovation exercise, if we can introduce an element of simulation, it makes it that much more tangible and visual. And then hence people then can come forward, collaborate and give their perspective saying, hey, in the hindsight, if this was done like that, maybe it would have worked. And maybe that is the aspect we didn't consider because obviously we didn't know about it at that point. So anything that can be done to bring simulation or anything similar to simulation in the exercise would probably add value to the exercise.
Just one point I would like to add over here is any case that is written, I would suggest that our intention is that whatever the learning, it sticks to our mind for a very long period of time. So the more the better way the story, the case is written in the form of an interesting story, the higher the chances that it will stick to your mind, and maybe some element of drama that can be added to a case that will really linger on the person's mind for a very long time. So wherever you can building a few in the form of a conversation or in the form of some dramatic presentation rather than just a simple narrative, it will stick to the mind for a much longer time and make it more interesting for people to participate.
Okay.
And one more thing I would want to highlight, that is a lot of times we in the industry, we would want to get involved into case writing, but we do not have the time. So the academic people, if ever do not feel shy of interacting and asking people around that if they would want to collaborate with you in terms of for writing a case, so that person from the actual scene and the person from the academic, it can be a good mix to write a good, useful, meaningful case.
So you mean to say industry is and industry leaders like you are open for case writing?
Yeah, I don't know
because that is
a lot of us are. I for one definitely.
Yeah, because that is one of the perception in the participants that industries are not ready. So it's good to hear from you that yes, industry leaders and managers and entrepreneurs like you are ready for such collaboration.
Sure. Any professor from any institute, if you would want to collaborate with me, I've got a manufacturing industry and a manufacturing background. So I'm ready to collaborate to highlight any of the aspects of management that you would want to cover through a case.
Wonderful. So participants, here is your opportunity to collaborate with live industry for field research case study. Grab this.
Nice.
Okay, Dr. Asa, would you like to share what of things?
Yeah, can I come in for a minute? I'm not able to resist
please.
myself after hearing the esteemed panel. Won't take more than 1 minute. So my name is Sriram and I've actually moved from the industry into full-time academics about 3 years ago. And I've been hearing this, all your valuable insights and expectations rather. And I also wanted to kind of, wanted to share with you that at Universal Business School, what we have, because most of us are from the industry, and we have actually moved to this side of the table to actually fix these gaps, right? So a few things that we have done, and I think that would probably help or assuage your concerns a bit, is in our academic delivery, we have created a model of 4 different delivery models for a particular course. And traditionally, it used to be always classroom teaching, and then now we've added 3 more. We've been a proponent of experiential learning, and that's where I hear Kandap talking about simulation. So when we talk about experiential learning, it's just not case study; it could be role plays, simulations, escape room, so on and so forth. We've also added an important dimension that we heard here is about self-learning. We want our students to start being ready to know that self-learning is a critical element of learning for life. And that habit needs to be formed at the institute level. So we've added self-learning to that. And the 4th one is community learning, where we encourage students to interact with the industry, and we get industry patrons to come and, actually talk about a particular topic or a particular area, right? So all the 4 aspects of learning has been put into our academic delivery module, and the percentages are also defined, and as they go in from term 1, from the first year to the second year, the components of self-learning, community learning and experiential learning becomes more than half than the classroom teaching. So that's actually to get them habituated to look at these avenues as they move into the corporate, as in so that this habit continues there. So that's one point I wanted to say. And very quickly in 30 seconds is we've also launched a new kind of a service which is we call it C-Maps instead of the traditional live project. This is a collaborative multidisciplinary approach towards problem solving. So we are actually going to the industry and saying, we know as industry every day we have multiple problems, small, and there's no time to attend or give the span of attention for some of the problems, and they continue as we do our review meetings. So we would like to propose where we want to put in a few students across functions to the industry, saying allow us the students to actually spend 4 weeks and come back to you with a solution. And the whole idea here is that's exactly what the industry expects. Once a person joins, that the person would start being able to look at problem solving as an important skill, right? So I just wanted to share the 2 bits that we are trying to put into our B school, which hopefully bridges the gap with the expectations of the industry. Thanks so much for your patience to hear me on this.
So the major outcome of this session is, I would like to illustrate 3 important case studies here, and I've given here around 3 important graphs. These are the 3 important graphs which I would like to talk about. Can you guess what is this? Anybody? Any of your can you guess what is this 3 graphs which we are talking about? Can you understand anything from these 3 important pictures that I have shown you? Any participant, can you understand and give me a feedback? Yeah.
Maybe it's a business cycle.
Business cycle, yeah, you're absolutely correct. It is a business cycle. But no, can you tell me the difference between these three different cycles?
Actually, like in the first one, we mostly have like a recession side, like the orange part is below the red line, and like the second one, which is the red one, there is a upper part, like there are two peaks where we can see the inflationary period where it's a progressing, and then in the last one we don't see any kind of downward trend. It's always an upward trend in the inflationary side. That's my take. Maybe it's my understanding.
Okay, I would like to add too. Maybe it could be the skill development. At first of time we are starting to accept and we learn. Then some period of time we are in between ups and downs. Then finally once we have certain skills, so we are peak and we are going up. So that's how I can.
Okay, good, no understanding. Anybody else? Any other thought process you have?
Like this may be of like a learning cycle for any new task or any new skill. Like initially when we learn something, we feel that we know a lot of things, but actually we don't know much. And then we learn more, and then we realize that okay, we don't really know that much which we are thinking earlier that we know. And at the last, when we still read more and more about the subject, our knowledge in reality it increases. Like,
Good understanding.
With context to the business cycle, I think the orange one shows that in short term you might not be earning much, maybe you will face losses, but when you look at the broader picture, the industry as a whole is growing with time. It's just a matter of few years maybe that you need to survive.
Yes, very correct. Yeah. Right understanding. Okay. So if nobody else has any other, maybe you may have a lot of thought process, but no, whatever you have rightly mentioned is actually correct. This is basically a business cycle. It could be a learning cycle. But in the context of an institution, okay, I'm talking about the business or the growth pattern of an institution. So if you see here, in the first cycle, the first picture there, the investment has been done, business started, institution started, then they were able to progress well. There was a growth. But due to certain reasons, what happened? The progress. When you take an institution, it could be like admission, students admission, or if it is a startup, it could be revenue model. Or if you are trying to talk about a student, it is basically the learning curve. What happens is slowly declines. But it is important that we understand the decline of this institution process, the growth process. We should be able to realize that there is a point where really the institution is actually going down, and that is to be evaluated before it could completely go down. So we need to have a point where we intervene and tell that okay, this is the time where I start correcting my institutional goals, where I correct my system, where I correct my entire process. So once you are able to do that correction, or where you are able to identify the process why the institution is trying to go down, or the business is trying to go down, implementing the intervention again, it will further deteriorate the entire business cycle. But after some time, it may start growing. So that is what we try to understand at this point of time. The first picture there, wherein they were able to see certain growth, and because of the kind of growth pattern, the system, the management, the people involved in it were not able to understand why it is trying to grow, and they were very happy. Suddenly, there is a downfall in it, and now they have realized that okay, we are now actually in the loss. So now there must be an intervention done. Once that intervention is done, then again, that intervention should be ensuring that it is basically trying to accelerate the business process, and we try to go ahead of whatever our plans are. We meet our end objectives, aim, mission, everything is actually there. So again, we regain the popularity and we become number one, number two, and number one. That is what we try to see in the first picture. But if you take the second picture there, what happens is, yes, so the business started, the institutional activities have started, everything is going on fine. Again, there is a peak. Again, what happens? Slowly it starts deteriorating. Once it deteriorates, yes, the institution has identified that as we are trying to go down, and then there is an intervention that has happened. After intervention has happened, it is taking some time to again accelerate the business. But once it is getting accelerated, then what happens is again able to peak. But the peaking is not according to the previous one. Okay? It is basically trying to you will be able to see some amount of success. But after that, it is unable. You are unable to do anything. It is again falling down. So the business is definitely going to get closed. Whatever intervention you try to do, even after that, after the first cycle of intervention, whatever you may try to do, it may not be able to lead to the next success. So you come across a situation where the institution gets closed, almost getting closed. So that is what we come across in the second cycle. In the third picture, we find that yes, the business is really doing very good. It has reached the peak, but it has got saturated. It has really got saturated. Saturated, there is no loss, there is always a gain. But again, that cannot be a business model. So we want the business to always get into multiple. We want the business to get diversified, try to create new opportunities, new employment, new business plans, new revenue models. So again, if you see, the intervention also should happen there when the business gets saturated, and that intervention should be able to enable the institution to further accelerate the revenue model. So we will take these three examples into consideration over the next 20-30 minutes, and I will share my experiences wherein I was able to I was a part of all the three processes. Okay, and now the current institution where I'm working with, this is since last 6 months I'm into this institution, but I have already worked with these three institutions. I've already come across certain institutions where I was able to contribute, where I was a part of it, where I was able to help them out, implement there, and then we're able to see all the three cycles. So keeping these as the base, I would like to develop the case studies. So these three cases, what I'm trying to project here, it is based upon my experiences and the experiences that I could gain in the institutions that I was working with, and also the institutions that I was associated with. Okay. Now, a bit about our institution, Cambridge Group of Institutions. It was started in 1964 as a simple school. And today we have, we have UBS College, Degree College. Then we also have Engineering College, and we also, we are located in Bangalore, and we are affiliated to Visvesvaraya Technological University. Now there are 2 engineering colleges under the Cambridge Group, and we also have a UBS College. We also have a school as well. This is about our institution, and our philosophy is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Okay, so that's what our philosophy is, wherein we want the entire world is considered as a single family, and all of us are the stakeholders of this, and we like to fulfill the goals of all the stakeholders. Now, these are some of the projects that I am involved with at Cambridge Institute of Technology. I am actually working on a project along with my team in my department on real-time virtual lab. Okay, it is actually a funded project from Government of Canada. And I'm working on a project called Underwater Sensing and Navigation. Again, it's an engineering project wherein we try to get involved with all the underwater vehicles. And then we are also working with a HISRO-funded project on hyperspectral imaging. Okay? And then we also have a DRDO-funded project on GPR, that is ground penetrating radar. And we also have a project on bird versus drone recognition. And then we also have a project funded by VTU, that is the university, on non-communicable diseases. Now, why I'm trying to project this is particularly because all these projects are all research-oriented projects, but the end objective of this project is to convert this outcome of this research into a business model, to convert these projects into a startup, to convert or incubate the people working in this project to become entrepreneurs. So that is the end objective of this, so that what happens, the technology, whatever we develop out of this project, should be useful to society, should be able to generate revenue, should be able to generate employment. And that is the reason why most of the funding agencies are looking out for institutions who can really write proposals and get the fund, which could lead to multiple other benefits. So all these projects, whatever we have obtained from these funding agencies through various schemes, through various funding process, is by highlighting that yes, this project is not only going to be a research element, but there is also going to be a lot of business activities. Okay? So that is the reason why I am trying to present this slide. In addition to that, we are also working with multiple companies, particularly on the consultancy aspect, because today consultancy is other place where there is a lot of revenue that could be generated for an academic institution. So similarly, all other institutions are working on it. We are also trying to put our effort into trying to get into this consultancy activity. And currently, we are working with a company called SASMOS, that is, it's into aerospace engineering, or particularly into avionics. So we are trying to help them out in building some kind of technology that could reduce the scrap, that could reduce the talk time reduction, that could help in part rationalization. So that is another project where students are involved, faculty members are involved, and that is also going to convert. We are trying to see how we can convert the outcome of this consultancy into a commercial model, and how do we incubate students to start their own companies. Okay? So that is the reason why I have projected these two things, and we are actively participating in this app process. Okay? Yeah. Now let us get into the examples, whatever I had actually mentioned. So the first example, according to my knowledge, according to our expertise, according to the team that we are working with, we are able to build this case study, and I understand the first case study that I was mentioning is the example one is investigating the reasons in decline in students' admission for advanced certification course. This is one of the case studies that I would like to have a detailed discussion for the course of. So in this case study, we are trying to understand the following aspects, wherein the institution started off an entity wherein they wanted to offer advanced certification programs and make the students industry ready and get employment opportunities for students. And these employment opportunities with regarding the core areas, maybe it could be into avionics, embedded systems, okay, or it could be automotive, it could be mechanical design, or any of these activities. So the institution identified that there is a gap available between the academia, or the students graduating from the academia, and the industry. So the institution came out with a model wherein can we offer a 6 months or a 1 year certification program, and this certification program will be conducted in partnership with the industry, and this certification program will ensure that the students are able to gain the technical expertise which are required in the industry. So this is the first example which I would like to take up and discuss over the next few minutes. The context of this case study is, see, what is happening is, whenever an institution is able to start such programs, and we know that there is a lot of job opportunities available. There is a lot of job opportunities available in this process. So what happens is, a lot of students just come and enroll, because many of them would have got campus recruited, but most of them don't have got that kind of campus equipment. So what they do is they try to come and enroll into such kind of courses. Once they start enrolling into these courses, we see that there is a lot of money being involved in it. So every student spends minimum of 50,000 to 1.2 lakhs to just get certified. So in this institution where I was also part of it, I was also part of this process, we were able to find that every batch we used to have around 30 to 40 students enrolled in the program, and they were able to get certified. Now the factors really that started affecting the decline in the student admission was, there was the students started slowly deteriorating. But things, initially we used to have at least around 300 applications coming here, out of which we were able to shortlist around 30 or 40 students for the program. But later on we found that there were only 10 students enrolling in the program. So that created a lot of created a lot of gap between the management, because they were totally dependent upon the students' admission fees for running this program. So the faculties were also involved. The faculties also were not being paid well. So what happened? Automatically, the faculties who were teaching this, who were involved in this, also were having good amount of experience. So they also started leaving the process. Then to manage this, there were salary cuts. There were fear among employees that yes, they may lose the job anytime, and the institution may close at any point of time. And then these automatically what happened now, because of all these reasons, many reasons of which we'll be discussing one by one, the popularity of the institution also came down due to false promises and maintenance of infrastructure. So this is the context in which we would like to understand how an institution really, what was the example or what was the kind of research that an institution like us did to overcome this scenario. So The objective of this process is to investigate approaches to bolster institutional revenue model through qualitative research combined with innovation in business process. See, this is again a very good example which we were able to really involve and see how an institution can really intervene and get into the research process and identify the limitations of the existing system and bring in some technology activities or there's some interventions into it and make the business model successful. This study is actually a single intrinsic case study, and now the case is centered on issues of institutional growth towards self-sufficiency. So this institution being entity, and no, there is nobody, there is nothing like you have a regular student coming in, because it is not an engineering college, not a medical college, not it's a degree college. It is basically a certification entity. It's basically a certification organization where students who have been graduated come there, enroll, get trained, and then go to industry. So we are not, this institution was not governed by AICTE, UGC or nothing else. It's basically a separate entity where the things we just train and place students. So what happens? The institution has to have some kind of self-sufficient model so that they maintain the entire process. So during this research, we were able to collect data from industry, understanding the demands, and then we were also even able to connect these students and understand what were the requirements. And keeping all this in mind, the case study was actually built. Now, the key findings of this case study was, yes, we found that there is a decline in the student strength, and that decline in the student strength was because of multiple reasons. The multiple reasons that really affected the decline in the students' admission was like, yes, the institution was totally dependent on a single company, because we were able to sign an MOU with that company, and that MOU very clearly stated that you cannot partner with any other institutions or any other companies who are offering similar kind of programs, similar kind of services, similar kind of support. So the process was like you sign up for an MOU with this company and then you stick to it for the next 5 years. And then you have to totally be dependent on the infrastructure that they are going to provide, the software, the hardware, the cost structure, everything was defined, decided by them, and keeping that, we were supposed to run the process. And then in addition to that, the MOU also stated that you have to use external faculty members, and these external faculty members were recruited from the company. We couldn't have an internal resource, we couldn't have internal expertise to run the entire course. So we were entirely dependent upon external faculty members to run the process. And in addition to that, the company also told that yes, you have to use only the proprietary software and the teaching resources, whatever they are going to provide, and for this entire process. So all these findings we were able to come out during the research activity that we understood, and that is what we are going to present it as part of this case study. Then we also found out that there is expecting the associate company for providing placement and training. Again, that was a very big mistake that we came across, that we were totally dependent upon the company for both placement as well as for training services. Because for us, that was the company, but that company, like us, had multiple other MOUs. Maybe they had around MOUs across the country of around 30 to 40. So they were supposed to support all the 40 different companies now. But for us, this was the only company with whom we are associated. Okay. Then by seeing the kind of craze among students, by seeing the kind of importance given by students to enrollment, the management, people operating this business thought that yes, we'll take more number of students so that we'll be able to quickly make a lot of money. So again, by admitting more number of students without screening, what happened? They were able to complete the certification, but it was difficult for us to place the students in the right companies. So whenever they go to the campus equipment, whenever they go to the interviews, they were not able to really do well, and that really affected the complete popularity of the institution or the certification programs. In addition to that, because these two faculties who were there working with us, they were all well experienced. They also started getting very good jobs, and management were not able to retain those faculty members. So the institution started recruiting external faculty members, and again that led to a lot of other ambiguities, a lot of feedback from the students that they were not really capable of doing things. Yeah. In addition to that, the course monitoring was also a very difficult task, and we were not able to even upgrade the existing resources to meet the competition. So all these factors were actually involved, and this is the kind of research that actually has been done, and this is one of the case studies that we have prepared it, and we will tell more about this activity. I hope any questions you have here at this point of time.
There is a question from Dr. Asha Bhatia from University.
So, Dr. Cyril, we see that you're sharing one of the case studies as one of the challenges and probably the best practices. But I find that this is very structured in terms of research. It goes very well as a research paper, but as a case study, I think there has to be some, we call it a fork. Either you do this, or it could have been that. There are options. So probably if we had to bring this to class as a case study, then there has to be given some flexibility to that.
Okay.
So that is a thought. Of course, a very good example, but just one thought, how a research paper or a research manuscript differs from a case study.
Yes. I understand.
So is there anyone else who wants to add to this? Any questions from the participants, from the audience?
I do have a question.
Yes, please.
Okay, sir, I would like to ask, yesterday actually we have done the types of cases, actually we studied the types of cases. So this case, under which type we just say that, okay, is it an incident, is it a decision case, is it a complicated complex case, exercise case? So where do we just fit this case in the category? If you can just put a light on that.
See, what I have done is I have just presented you the kind of research work that we did, wherein we identified that why there was a decline in the students' admission. Okay. Now we also continued this work, and we were able to even we were able to even come up with some kind of methodologies, some kind of interventions here, where all these limitations were addressed, and we were able to further accelerate the business process. So I have kept that in my next session, in the next coming slides. So then you will understand in which case this would actually fall. But I also request Professor Asha, if at all, if she is able to answer this question.
So I think it would have been a decision-making case if we had a few options, either this or what were the thoughts? What did you all? In which directions were you thinking? What were the options? And then what did you decide? And why?
Okay.
So a little bit of background on that would have helped.
Yes.
For us to understand it better as a case study.
Yes.
All right. So that's a little bit from my side, and probably Professor Ketan Gandhi in his session could elaborate more on this and relate it to what the participants have done in the class yesterday, in the workshop yesterday.
Okay.
All right.
Any other inputs? Anything else you would like to ask?
So I would think it was.
There is a query from a student. You can come here and ask. Yeah.
So I would think it is a situation-based case study, as we have analyzed the situation, as the context was already given to us, as it was the situation is given the decline in the student admission and advanced education courses. So I would believe so. It is a situation case study, as the situation was pre-analyzed, and we have to work through it and decide, and we have to work through the collective data which was given to us.
Okay, so
excellent. Thank you for that insight. You really attended the session and taken full note of what Professor Ketan Gandhi has shared.
Yes.
It's over to you, Dr. Saidal.
Yeah. Okay, see, actually, what I've just created this example. It's only a part of the entire process that I'm trying to present it here, because when we talk about the entire process further, this is another case study that I would like to mention here. See, again, I would like to correlate these three case studies with regarding to this outcomes. So the first example, what I actually mentioned was the first cycle, what you are able to see there. So we were able to do research. We found why there is a decline, but at the same time, we were able to even we were able to come out with some kind of solutions which could really rectify that due to certain research element, and then we were able to further accelerate. Today, the institution that I am talking about has it started off with an advanced training institution. Today, it has now become a university and one of the top universities in the country. So I will name that university at the end of the session. So, but at least I will try to tell you that yes, this is how the institution started growing. Okay, we had a very difficult task. So this input, what I'm trying to give you here, this was during 1999 to 2003. During that day, we had started off that university or an institution, keeping in mind that yes, it should become a university, but to become a university, we wanted to demonstrate certain new activities. That is how the institution started off with offering these advanced certification programs. So it was really doing good. Management was very happy about the process. Management told, okay, you are now the responsible person to drive this institution. So I was working along with my group of people. I was reporting to my director. So all of us were really around some 20-25 members involved in this process, and we started off this entity, and it was really doing good in the market. Suddenly we found that there is a decline in the total admission process because of all those reasons. Because the company with whom we had also signed an MOU also told, no, we are not going to support you further because you have to become independent. So that is where the entire decision was supposed to be taken, and we were not knowing what to do further. So one day the management called us and told that yes, there are around 8 people working in this organization. So we will be able to support you for the next 3 months, next 6 months. After that, we may not be able to do anything because we do not have funds to support. You have to take care of your career opportunities. So that was a time where all of us were really embarrassed. All of us were really under a lot of pressure. Even my director, with whom I was working with, also was under pressure. So we were not knowing what to do next. And that is where we were able to work on this research. What we did could help us in understanding how to turn over this process. So I will try to share that as well in the later stages. Yes. Now in the example 2. Again, this is my experience with another institution which I was working with. Yeah. So that institution okay. So please, any questions? Yeah. Can you please ask?
It was for the purpose of your organization. Did you get it published?
This was not published.
Okay, that was not. Because did you connect any theory into that? Or
Yes.
It was which theory and which subject that was suitable for? I mean, that is more kind of a research-based, case study, right? If I'm not wrong. So how did you connect it with the theory, and which course you opted for?
I will try to answer your question at the end of this, because you will understand what kind of research, what kind of subjects was this connected with. Okay.
So I think
Okay.
I'll answer your queries at the end of the thing, because there are 2 more case studies. Then you will be able to understand how are we going to link all this through.
Okay, please carry on, Dr. Saile.
Okay. Now the other case study that I was able to document is this, wherein we were part of another institution. Particularly, I was part of another institution. Where the institution was offering higher education programs in engineering. It was an engineering college, and the engineering college was not so good. It was okay, tier 2, tier 3 kind of a college, and then they wanted to get into the process of the academic excellence. So that is the reason why they were able to form a team, and I was one of the members of the team, and we entered into that team, and we thought, okay, to make this institution really grow. We thought, okay, emphasizing on R&D would really have a very good visibility for the institution. So the context in which this case study, this research was done is, how do we bring the institution, or how do we emphasize on academic excellence and ranking for the institution? And we found that one of the factors for this is the R&D, and how R&D can play a very important role in this entire process, particularly getting funds, getting into consultancy, involving students to become entrepreneurs, incubation process, training activity, faculty exchange programs, and outreach programs like patents, publishings, and institutional interactions, and collaboration leading to diversification of institutional excellence. So all this is also one of the other activity that we were involved with, and that is also taken as one of the case study here for illustration. So the objective was to investigate institutional growth with emphasis on R&D activities. So we were trying to see how this R&D can influence the academic excellence or the growth of the institution. Okay? And this requires, we know that every institution will have, one is academic part, the other one will be the research part, the third one would be the consultancy training, and last is international collaboration. So these are the 4 pillars of an institution. So we were talking about only the R&D part, and we wanted to see how this R&D can influence all the other 3 pillars of the institution. Okay? So that is the kind of work that I would like to present it at this point of time. And again, we used to have a lot of feedback taken, and the findings were like, yes, for all institution has to get into the R&D process, infrastructure becomes a very, very important activity. Without the availability of infrastructure, then it will be very difficult for starting up an R&D activity, because R&D requires infrastructure, and that too we are trying to work with the engineering activity. So we need a lot of funds, we need a lot of support from the management or from external sources to set up the state-of-the-art facilities. Okay? So for that, we need to work with various industries. We need to access the laboratory facilities available in the country, to generate revenue through training and consultancy, and then create this lab facility. That was one of the important findings that we were able to come across. And the second important thing is we need to have a core group for R&D activities. It's not that a faculty is involved in all the processes. It's not that he's getting involved in academics, he's getting involved in MBA, math, is getting involved in consultancy, R&D. No, that cannot work out. So we also found that yes, there must be a faculty member who can really only focus on R&D activities, and a dedicated focus on R&D activities, then exchange his ideas, whatever he has gained in R&D, to other verticals. That is again a model. Then it is also important that we need to get fund from various sources. It's not that we are going to only get funding for research activity. We should be able to get funding for even the training program. We should get funding for consultancy. We should be able to get funding for startups. We would get funding for doing some market survey. So funding is not limited to only one part of it. We should be able to get funding from various sources. So that is also what we were able to find out at the end of this process. Then it is also very important that the research work, whatever has been done in this institution, is basically marketed. It is basically percolated. It creates an awareness among the other community members that yes, there is an institution like this which is very excellent in this kind of R&D, and they have a very good technical strength. So that outreach program also plays a very important role for promoting the R&D activities within an institution. And see, the management or the funding agency will be able to give the fund for a certain amount of time. Maybe the first 3 years, there is a lot of money involved in it. Funding can come from the funding agency, or it could be coming from management. But after that, the R&D, the institution should become self-sustainable. So we need to start generating revenue, and that revenue generation is going to happen because of training, consultancy, product development, and commercialization process. But above all this, there is another concept called equipment leasing. So this is also a very important process for ensuring that there is huge revenue that is available for promoting the R&D activities within an institution. Okay? So this is another example which I would like to take up and then see how we were able to get into the process of research, and how this research is able to help us in this activity. But again, this example is related to the second picture that I was trying to tell you here. Yeah. We were able to focus on the R&D part, and then we were able to make the institution much popular. But again, what happened? There was a catch in that. So the entire focus shifted towards R&D, but the other 3 things, the academic excellence, all other things, we were not able to concentrate because the focus was towards R&D, and slowly, the institution, again started deteriorating its admission process because of various reasons. So this is also one of the findings that we were able to document in our research. And the last example that we were able to come across is this investigating the importance of technology intervention in accelerating the business process. example is with regarding to one of the company which I was mentoring. So we were able to we were able to help at least around some 22 companies to become startups, or we were able to incubate them. But one of the companies which we found them was, yes, they were able to have a very good idea, very fantastic idea. And using that fantastic idea, they were able to really generate a lot of revenue for themselves. They were able to they were able to do good business. They had a lot of nice time. But suddenly what happened, their product became obsolete within a very short duration of time. And once the product became absolute, they were not knowing what to do further, because these people are young graduates, young entrepreneurs. They're just out of the college. They could identify a very big problem statement which could really generate a lot of revenue for them. They were able to generate revenue also. Once they started seeing the revenue, they completely focused on the business model. But again, they were not able to focus on the technology part of the process. So what happened? The company almost it was about to get it was saturated. There was no further growth in the business. That is where we intervened as a research, as a mentor. Then we try to see how we can take the existing product that they have or existing technology that they have, upgrade the technology, but bringing in new applications or new areas. So that was another thing that we were actually able to do. And the objective of this work was to investigate how R&D and technology intervention can accelerate the new business process. Okay. Again, this is another kind of example which I would like to tell upon here. What we were able to find in our research processes, yes, technology adoption into new application areas is one of the important things. That means you cannot always keep banking on one technology and start building a company portfolio. You have to diversify at a time where you know what is your core strengths are or core technologies, and see how you can use the technology for other domains, or how you can use the technology for expanding it into, for example, it could be a multidisciplinary approach. You get into you are trying to build a technology for medical domain, but can I adopt the technology for agriculture? Can I adopt the same technology for construction? Can I adopt the same technology for automation? Can I adopt the same technology in defense area? So that diversification has to happen. So since the knowledge of the students were very limited because they're just fresh out of the college, that is where the experience comes into picture. So that is where the mentorship comes into picture. So when we started mentoring this, we could understand that the technology was great, super, but they were not knowing where to adopt it. So that is where we were able to tell them that, okay, this is where you can adopt the technology. So when we started doing this, we wanted certain amount of investment to come from, because all the investment, whatever they had, was all exhausted. So we thought, okay, can we approach Government of India? Again, there are multiple schemes available under Government of India through which we are able to get the funds, and that fund further help the students to diversify and upgrade the business process. Again, for all these things, what is important is, since the startups may not have some amount of kind of human resources, they have to partner with an academic institution, because that is where they can access all the infrastructure, human resources, and all those activities which can really help them in diversifying their company portfolio. So these are the three examples that I have just summarized here, but we would like to go in depth of each one of them as we keep going further. So at this point of time, do you have any queries? So I've just told you what are the research that we did, what are the key findings that we did, but I have not really got into how we were able to help them out. So that is again, we may have to discuss about it. Yeah.
Privileged to have you, Ketan. Thank you once again, and Professor Dr. C. Ramakrishnan. So I know you're in this virtual world. We would have loved to have you here in our campus in Mumbai, but since we are doing this virtually and physically, I'm going to do the honors, and on behalf of both you distinguished gentlemen, I'm going to be opening up the case study. It has, I don't know whether they're going to tell you about it. My highlight about this is that it covers cases written by our faculty from 5 or 6 countries, or 7 countries. The ones I remember is United States, Canada, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, China, and of course India. So we've put in a lot of effort. These are 14 cases which will come through in our journal, and it's all thanks to the tutoring we got from Professor Ketan Gandhi. So this is the output. We believe in output, not about just talking. So I don't know whether you can see it. Wonderful. And we are hopeful that the quality of cases which will be seen would be definitely nothing short of world class, and will be in the case center soon. So thank you once again, and this is a big step of Universal Business School towards researching companies in India, in Asia Pacific, because I don't know of many schools who would get into institutions in Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, China. So we've gone in there to figure out and produce this. So thank you once again, and congratulations to the faculty.
So I am here to present thanks to all. Firstly, I would like to thank our chief guest for today, Executive Director AMDISA, our knowledge partners, Case Center UK and AMDISA, and special thanks to Ganeshwar Rao and Ms. Shubhami. They are from AMDISA. They have been with us throughout this journey. They have been very helpful. And to our chairman, Mr. Tarun Anand, our faculty members, and mostly the participants and the management of the UBS. Thank you so much.